All right, good evening. This is the Tuesday, May 28th, 2019 Board of Education meeting. The board has been in closed session since 6 o'clock for the items listed on the agenda. We have 6 board members present, 1 absent. We'll stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board will receive public comments for up to 3 minutes concerning items on this agenda, as well as communication, petitions, reports from citizens, or representatives of other public agencies. I have 1 speaker on the list, Jan Dorner.
Hi, my name is Jan Dorner, and I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst. As many of you know, I've been observing school board meetings for a long time. I believe it's close to 30 years. Whether I attended a meeting 29 years ago or a year ago, I always was given or allowed to access backup material before a meeting. Lately, that hasn't been the case. I am not sure if this decision is the board's decision or the administration's, but since the superintendent reports to the school board, I'm asking for transparency to return to the posting of board docs and that the public side of board docs return to containing presentations before a meeting. At your last meeting on May 14th, 3 presentations were given. The PowerPoint presentations that accompany them were not posted on the public side of board docs until after the meeting. I asked the responsible individual if this was a mistake and was told that she put them where she was directed to put them. I do not understand the secrecy involved with a presentation on teaching students to solve problems in a group or working on blended learning, or all-day kindergarten recommendations that the community and the board has been requesting, or the special education program analysis, which was complemented by a board member as well put together. It's really so much easier to follow a presentation if it's been reviewed before it's presented. I'm sure that you as board members would agree with this. I'm asking that this board move back to a more transparent time and ask the administration to again post backup material on board docs before meetings. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? Okay. With that, then, we will move on to approval of board meeting minutes. We need to approve revised January 22nd, 2019 minutes, February 12th, 2019, February 26th, 2019, March 11th, 2019, and April 23rd, 2019, and May 14th, 2019 minutes. Are there any changes? Okay, if not, they stand as presented. And then approval of April 23rd, 2019 and May 14, 2019 closed session minutes. Are there any? There were no other changes. So those stand as presented as well. We will move on to superintendent's agenda, the consent agenda. Are there any items that a board member would like to pull? Okay, if not, then do I have a motion?
I move we approve the superintendent's consent agenda, items A through F.
I'll second.
Okay, go ahead and call the vote.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Trotman? Yes. Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Gaforia?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next up is superintendent's agenda action items. Number 1, approval of adoption of all-day kindergarten option.
So this item presented at the last board meeting and is based off of the all-day kindergarten committee recommendations that came through 3 different subcommittees. What's included here is primarily through the early implementation and tuition subcommittees. Want to just highlight a couple things in the recommendation. A half-day program will always remain an option for families. We expect that so the idea was that the committee believed that the appropriate recommendation was to try to get as many opportunities for as many families as possible as soon as possible. And so this recommendation is based on projected available space at each of the buildings in conjunction with the new construction and renovation projects that are planned. Some schools already have the space to be able to move to a full-day option. Other schools do not. And then, of course, some schools will be used for certain specific purposes like Hawthorne and Edison during the construction to house students, and Lincoln and Field are the 2 schools that will be torn down and rebuilt. So in the schools that do not have room to move to full implementation, the chart that's provided, the word partial implementation is basically synonymous with the fact that we anticipate that there would be 1 classroom per school, enough space in each of those schools where we could have 1 classroom that we could find enough room to have a full day option. And then it's very likely in those schools that not everybody who is interested in participating will have the opportunity to participate immediately. So at the last board meeting, there were different points of view and thoughts that were raised and brought to the table about how to handle the lottery system. And when we walked out of that last meeting, it was my understanding that the board was interested in moving ahead with the early implementation plan, and that we would come back with a detailed proposal of how a lottery would work and give you enough time to work through that so that we could vote on that by the end of the summer in time to hold some of our community meetings and get the lottery system and registration process off the ground in the fall. And so there are no details specifically on the lottery. I've begun to draft some, and I will contact other schools and districts to see if they've had experience with this and see if I can learn anything from them and bring something forward to you on what we think that could look like, and make sure you're comfortable with anything that would move forward. Then the other piece of this is the tuition, which was established to be a break-even number for the district. So the cost for that would be $2,700 per family per year. And the reduced fee would be half of that, $1,350. And then families that qualify for a fee waiver would pay nothing. Students that are in a self-contained special education program or a dual language program would not be charged a fee. By law, those are the services that they receive, and so there would be no fee attached to that. And then one thing we did say about the lottery system, though, is that in the places where not everybody would have access, that priority would be given to students with IEPs or identified as at risk. So those are the key components that I would highlight that follow from the conversation 2 weeks ago. And Mary, who worked with the Early Implementation Committee, could possibly provide some clarification if people have some additional questions.
So if I can have a motion, then we'll have discussion.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education adopt an all-day kindergarten option for District 205.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for putting together the recommendations, and I'm supportive of moving forward with these options. While, as I mentioned, I think last meeting, it would be ideal to do it for all of the buildings at the same time, but I'm supportive of moving forward in a phased approach. And I also wanted to mention, though, for me to support the lottery system that we'll evaluate in August, I would like to see a focus on trying to work down the student-teacher ratio from the mid-20s for these classes. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that I am aware of your sensitivity to that, and we're going to be very, very careful how we try to word the provisions to be as sensitive to that as we can.
I just, so I think you kind of covered it, Dave, but Mary, could you just, articulate again when it says full and partial, what that means, and then also, well, do that, and then I'll follow up. How's that?
Sure. So when it says in the chart partial implementation, that means that there's room in a building for one class of all-day kindergarten, and any remaining sections that that school has will be a half-day program. So during a partial implementation phase, students who attend all day will be in a classroom separate than kids who attend a half-day session. When we move to full implementation, that means that all of the sections that are allotted for that school will be all-day kindergarten sections. When that is in place, students who attend all day and half-day are in the same classroom, so they're not separated out.
Okay, so then my kind of follow-on is really for Bev. You're awake now, right?
Yes, I am.
Just, when this is communicated, like this chart and what partial and full look like, could you really make sure that that's super clear? One, that half day will always be an option and is offered everywhere at every school. And then just what full and partial really, it's just, I don't know, for some reason it's confusing. Maybe because, I don't know.
We can work with some terminology and test those two particular pieces out before we actually release communication, so that everybody is feeling solid and really see what will work with the community. Again, we want to avoid any kind of confusion between full and full day and partial and half day. So those are very synonymous types of terms, so maybe we can find some ways to clarify that.
Because I'm worried people are going to go, oh, they're doing all day kindergarten. Everybody's going to immediately assume that it's everywhere, and so
Sure. We'll also have our FAQs going as well as a backup with a glossary of terms. We can define all of those things and asterisk and bullet and do all kinds of things to make it clear. All right.
thank you. All right, anything else? All right, call the vote.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman, Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Gaforio.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next up is approval of settlement agreement between the Board of Education of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 and the Elmhurst Paraprofessional and School-Related Personnel Council, Local 571.
So this settlement is something that Jim can address if you would like during the discussion phase, but the recommended action is that the board approve this settlement.
Could I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the settlement agreement between the Board of Education of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 and the Elmhurst Paraprofessional and School-Related Personnel Council, PSRP, Local 571. Sorry.
I second.
Any discussion, questions?
Yes, could you give just a brief background on what this is?
This particular settlement agreement has to do with a contractual clause within the collectively bargained agreement between the district and the PSRP union that states that we would maintain a cadre of not less than 2 permanent traveling substitutes who go from building to building to building to fill in for educational assistants who are absent for personal reasons, sick days, things like that, to ensure that students have an aide that covers those classrooms. Since December of this year, we have only had 1 person in that cadre. In spite of our efforts to recruit, hire, and retain, we've offered the position to 4 different people. 1 person accepted and was gone after a week. Another person accepted and was gone after 2 weeks. And the other 2 people, once the offers were made, decided that they did not want to take the positions. So we have been unable to consistently fill that position this year in spite of our efforts. So while we believe as a district that we have done everything we can not only to find a replacement but to also provide alternative coverage through our permanent substitute program, which was new this year, and the fact that we are more highly staffed in our educational assistant department than we have been in the last 5 years, this is a technical clause within the contract. And so rather than push this any farther, it was filed at step 4. And the next step would have gone to either mediation, arbitration, which would incur expenses in legal fees and costs and would have dragged things out. And so we felt it was warranted that we would offer this as a settlement agreement, which basically takes the money we did not expend on that permanent substitute salary this year, and we spread that out across over 100, I think, employees. In recognition of their efforts to try to make sure that things were covered in the extra effort that they put forth this year. So that's kind of the history and the background. The good news is we already have a commitment from a second individual for next year, and we have a commitment from the person who was in the position permanently all year this year, moving into next year, and the agreement limits the union's ability to come back and file a grievance of a similar nature next year.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions, comments? Okay, call the vote.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next is the approval of staff salaries for 2019-2020, non-union.
So in May, we have brought the recommendation for all of the employees that are not covered through collective bargaining agreements to the board for approval. There are several of those employees that need to sign contracts, and so we try to process those contracts in June prior to the new contract year starting. And the board has traditionally authorized CPI increases. The rate for this year would be 2.1%. There is one provision that I will highlight, and that is that we have food service employees that are not being recommended for CPI. They're being recommended for 5% increases so that we could try to catch them up with what's the new minimum wage law. So we're complying with that and bringing those into line. And then the only other provision in here is that we do have some, the board did agree to treat retiring administrators in the same manner as the teachers are afforded in the contract. And so there are some people that have filed their retirement notices. So those agreements are already in place. They're not subject to the same recommendation, and those people are listed. There's only one thing that I do want to say, and that is that Linda Fehrenbacher, that number is 3%, not 5%. The actual listing of the salaries that you're approving has it correct, but we had people in a 6, 5, and 4-year option, And so the numbers were a little bit different for each person, and that was not caught from my original memo, so I apologize for that. But what you're approving is her actual appropriate salary. And then we do have some administrators, part of an administrator compensation system that have reached some longevity milestones, and those are listed separately as well in the rationale. So we would recommend that you approve the non-union employee salaries for 2019-2020 school year.
Is there a motion?
I move the Board of Education approve the 2019-2020 non-union salaries as recommended.
A second.
Any discussion? Okay, call the vote.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ghaforia.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is approval of resolution transferring funds from Operations and Maintenance Fund to Capital Projects Fund.
So I'm going to defer to Chris on this.
This is a transfer from the O&M fund to the Capital and Projects Fund. This is the amount of money that we had in the budget for this transfer, $2 million. This is for the summer capital maintenance projects. We are doing roof replacement at Madison and Jackson. We're doing paving work at York, Bryan, and Jackson, district-wide concrete work, and sidewalk repairs, floor replacement at York, Jackson and Hawthorne, fitness room renovation at York, the incubator lab at York, district-wide exterior door replacement, district-wide seal coating, updating district business automation system, and replacing fieldhouse lights to LED this summer. We will have a few more transfers. The Churchville parking lot is not included in this transfer. We'll have one for that at a later date. As you know, the Churchville parking lot paving work, that was in an appendix under TIF 4, which is the North York TIF. So that was in our intergovernmental agreement. So we're going to have that at a later time, a transfer related to that, as well as we talked about earlier about the fact that we were going to issue bonds this spring for the referendum, where we've held that off a year. So we will have transfers related to the planning and design work with the architects for the Bryan and Edison projects, because that bond issue is going to be in 2020, the spring of 2020. So we will have another transfer for that at a later time. But this transfer is from O&M to capital projects to cover these projects this summer.
Okay, motion?
I move the Board of Education approve the resolution to transfer money from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund in the amount of $2 million.
I second.
Any questions, discussion? Jim?
Chris, the parking lot at Churchville, we intend to submit that to the TIF for reimbursement?
We do intend to collect all those bills and prepare an invoice and send it to the city for that project.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Ghaforia.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda, approval of contract extension for York High School Bookstore.
So Chris can answer questions on this, but essentially we moved to, and if you want some, I can have him introduce this, but about 3 years ago, I think it was, we moved to an outside provider managing the bookstore at York, and now that contract with us moving toward more electronic and dynamic types of resources is a little bit further complicated with extending and renewing the contract. So our current contract with Bex, the recommendation is to renew that. There are a few things that are a little bit unusual about this in terms of the scope and length of the contract being a little bit different than maybe we would have projected 6 or 8 months ago when we started talking about renewing the contract. So do you think that we should further introduce anything, or should we just see if they have any questions during discussion?
So it is, instead of bidding this out, we decided to extend, but it's only a 21-month extension. This contract goes through October or September, and then we're going to renew it through June of 21. So it's a short-term renewal to help us in this transition period. The bookstore market is changing significantly to more digital content and a lot more online sales. And we are trying to do the same thing at York with online transactions and more digital content. And Bex is helping us with that, as well as this reduces the management fee from $60,000 to $30,000. We are going to take on more of the collection of fees from Bex. The school district is going to do more of that. So that really sums it up. But each year, York book sales that Bex has been here, the process has gotten more efficient. Parents are not standing in line as long. We've been moving to more to pre-packing items and improving a lot of the processes, and they've helped with their management experience along with their POS system and equipment, their database, that sort of thing.
Okay, motion.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the contract extension with Beck's Bookstore for management services for bookstore operations with an annual management fee of $30,000. This contract extension will be in effect October 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2021.
I'll second.
Questions, discussion? Jim?
I think we have an opportunity here to kind of look at this as our runway between now and June 30th, 2021 to completely automate our bookstore operations. My college kid, including, so first of all, under this, I checked with Chris, and the bookstore is going to be open during lunch hours when most kids come and buy their dance tickets, et cetera, et cetera. But, my kid that just graduated college a couple weeks ago, hardly knows what cash is, and I think that most of our high school students kind of look at us as so 20th century. Kids don't take cash. They probably won't write many checks in their lifetime. They bring their cell phones. They transfer money over their cell phones. And we've now got a runway through June 30th, 2021 to get on that runway. And kids will be buying dance tickets over their phones by June 2021, I hope. They'll be buying books over their phones. They'll be returning books over their phones. I just think we need to look at this as our opportunity to move to digital texts and to move to automated payment systems by the end of this contract.
Chris?
I agree with the spirit of Jim's comments just over the course, and I think that's why you structured it as a short-term agreement. Just separately, I would appreciate over the next couple of months maybe just understanding the split between digital consumption of educational material versus, books, essentially, and what that looks like for kids at various age groups in the district, and just comparing that to what's considered a healthy ratio for young kids all the way up to high school, just to better understand, how digital consumption is trending across the district. So not for discussion tonight, but I just wanted to mention that over the next couple months. Thank you.
Anything else? I wanted to say thanks. This reflects the very long conversation we had about it at the Finance Committee meeting. But this is a good place for us to be and get it done. So thank you. All right, go ahead.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Motion passes. Next item is approval of bid number 1914, waste disposal and recycling services.
So this contract was up, and we had 4 people bid on it. The recommendation is to move forward with Republic Services. And Todd is here if people have additional questions they would like to ask about this particular contract.
Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education award this invitation for bid number 19-14, waste disposal and recycling services, to Republic Services for unit prices of $23,868, trash/recycle dumpster pickup, $140 compactor lease, compactor per haul $95, and $65 per ton, which represents the firm's base bid.
I'll second.
Discussion, questions? Margaret?
I do have a variety of questions. All right, I'll start. We've had some conversation in the community about making our district more green. So coming at it from that perspective, that's what the base of my questions are. So my first question, what components of this award represents any environmentally conscious things such as composting, separation of recyclable, non-recyclable materials, anything of that nature?
Yes, with this bid and these specifications, we did not include composting, but we did include the recycled trash containers, which are co-mingle. So they can have paper, glass bottles, aluminum, cardboard, all in that recyclable container. And then also then we have a separate dumpster, which has the standard trash that we put in there. So it does have our trash dumpsters, our co-mingled recycled dumpsters, but no composting.
Right. So you gave us some information. I appreciate this. You gave us some information on the 4 bids, and there was quite a bit of difference between those 4. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you saw, what drove those differences. And I'll stop there.
A lot of those difference was talking with Republic, as they really wanted this bid. So how we structured this bid out there, we know throughout 52 weeks of the year that we have X amount of dumpsters at each school that would be picked up and delivered once, twice, or 3 times a week, depending on the building. Along with the trash compactor at York, we know we're going to get it picked up. So that's the charge. We know we're going to get paid for tonnages, and we know we're going to lease out that compactor. So that was the basis of the bid. So we structured everything out there of what we want. Say like Hawthorne, we want its recycled dumpster twice a week on Monday and Wednesday, and we want the trash on Tuesday and Friday, things like that. So we created that base bid so everybody's bidding on an apples-to-apples comparison out there. With this, Waste Management is our current provider for everything outside of York. They were actually not the lowest one. One of the firms that really wanted us to sit here and bid this out wasn't the lowest one. Republic was just very aggressive with it. They already have a lot of work here. They have the city work, so it just fits in their model of what they're contributing to Elmhurst here.
So let me just clarify, because that's good information, but let me just clarify, since there is quite a bit of a difference in these bids, sometimes double. Were there other components that that these other three companies included that were perhaps more environmentally friendly, which would have increased the cost versus what Republic included?
No, when they bid, we put the specifications out there. So we created all the specifications of exactly telling them what they're bidding on. We created a little chart out there showing them at each building how many dumpsters, the size of the dumpsters, how many times we want it done, so everybody's on the same foot page. Now, there may be other services that they provide, but that's not what we requested. We requested specifically the specifications of what we need, so all four of these vendors, or any vendor that sits there and bids on this, they know exactly what we're looking for.
All right, so then one last question. The Republic bid was mentioned as its base bid. Were there options that could have been included in here that would add to environmentally conscious services besides its base bid?
Nothing in there. The nothing for more environmentally conscious. What we mean by that base bid is I can sit there and tell you we want that dumpster twice a week, but things do happen. So it may be 3 times or 4 times a week. I don't know that. So that's why we got the base bid of a unit pricing of what the bare minimum requirement is in there. We also put unit pricing in there, so if it's July and there's nothing going on at the building, we tell them we don't want that picked up. We know what that deduct is going to be. So that's why we had the base bid. It's just across the board what everybody's bidding on. With York, I can't tell you how many times that we're going to empty that trash compactor, and I don't know the tonnage. It could be 5.7 tons or it could be 8 tons. So we kind of we had to level the playing field, so we got an apples to apples comparison.
So I'm going to say what I believe I heard from you one more time to make sure it's very clear, that these 4 bids, they were all given the exact same information. The bid that they proposed was based off of this information, and the variation has nothing to do with difference in services.
Correct.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, first of all, just thank you for your good work that you've been doing on our facilities priorities. It's much appreciated. I just had a quick question on data collection. And with this contract, would we get tonnage data for both recycling and I call it standard trash, I guess, at the building level? Or do we already have that data going historically?
We've never requested that data, but that is something I can work with their request out there.
Okay. Yeah, my thought process is it would be if we decide to report on either internally or externally in the future our environmental initiatives, it's good to have data to start from as a base for that, for tracking purposes. Yeah. Thank you.
I will definitely reach out to Republic.
Okay, anything else? All right, thanks. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Strautman?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is approval of stipend changes.
So Jim would be available to answer questions if you have them, but we, 2 years ago, I believe it was, established a stipend committee and came to agreements with what we're supporting and how different positions are slotted. And this recommendation is based on the board's approval of the middle school dean position, and then also the elimination of stipends that are no longer needed. The mentor supervisor stipend, because that person is retiring, and we do not believe that's consistent with how we want to see that program evolve. And then the special ed reorganization. Again, the stipends that you see there for elimination are due to the fact that organizationally we do not see the need to continue to support them. So we would recommend that you approve this.
Motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the changes to the stipends as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions, discussion? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda, approval of Jefferson Elementary School principal.
So this is my favorite item on the agenda. Christina has been waiting patiently over there. So Christina is currently doing the interim position for Dr. Thompson's leave at Emerson and has been for the last 2 years the assistant principal at Hawthorne and Lincoln. Extremely knowledgeable about instruction, former instructional coach, a lot of work in the district with our standards-based reporting, excellent relationships with teachers, and very pleased to be able to bring her forward tonight as a recommendation for the next principal at Jefferson, who's replacing Leslie, who will be coming to the district office as the director of curriculum.
Okay, motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Jefferson School elementary principal.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to give a little more detail, and that's perfect. I'm just going to give a little more detail to that motion. Thank you very much. That the Board of Education approve the reassignment of Dr. Christina Podraza from assistant principal to principal of Jefferson Elementary School with a base salary of $113,978 and a start date of August 1st, 2019. And I want to say a congratulations and welcome and job well deserved.
I'll second.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Welcome to being the principal of Jefferson School. Congratulations.
I can't believe we put the waste removal contract on the agenda before that.
We made her wait, you know. Things come to those who wait. Next is approval of nurses contract.
So we have an agreement with the hospital, and we contract out our nursing services. So these are not on our current teacher's contract, so they don't get, we have to renew our contract with them in a little bit different process. And so you see the dollar amounts that we've worked out with the hospital related to both the salary increase and the benefit cost increase. And we're recommending that you approve this. The contract that we have with the nurses is still beneficial to the district in terms of what the comparison of what it would cost if we paid these people on our existing teacher's contract. So we would recommend that you approve this motion.
Motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the contract with Elmhurst Memorial Hospital for nursing services as presented.
I second.
Any discussion, questions? Okay, go ahead.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is adoption of resolution ascertaining prevailing wages.
So you see the resolution is included in your packet. This is law, and so every year boards have to approve the resolution. And so we would ask that you do that. This is the verification that we're paying prevailing wages for the work that we contract out.
Motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the prevailing wage resolution as presented.
Second. Any questions, discussion?
I just want to confirm, state law requires us to vote yes on this. We have no other choice.
I guess that would be one way of saying it.
Just wanted to clarify.
All right, any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Gafforio.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda, approval of board member conference expenses.
So Jim has been the board rep through the transformational leadership or through the Innovation and Transformational Leadership Network. Again, this was a state law that was passed a couple years ago due to something that was going on at a junior college in the state. And so sometimes something happens and then the state passes a law and tells everybody else they have to do something. And that's what this is. So board members and administrators have to go through pre-approval processes for travel, and it has to be on the agenda and subject to board vote, in this case with a board member.
Okay, motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the travel expenses for board member Jim Collins to attend the Model Schools Conference in the amount of $1,150.
I'll second.
Any questions, comments?
I doubt I'll eat $150 worth of food, which is what the budget's allotted there.
It's a tough debate to support this, Jim. I think it's just...
As it should be. And maybe one of the cheapest business trips I've ever been on.
All right, go ahead.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Present.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Gafforio.
Yes. 5 ayes, no nays, 1 present, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is approval of funding for technology in the York High School Business Incubator.
So our foundation has been working with us on a lot of these projects related to career pathways and some of our innovative curriculum programming, and has graciously authorized a donation of $50,000 to the Business Incubator program to offset the costs of display technology in the new space. And they have been extremely cooperative in terms of working with our district office administration on district priorities, and this is a wonderful gift that will go a long way toward making that, getting that program off the ground successfully in the fall.
Okay, motion.
I move the Board of Education approve acceptance of a gift of $50,000 from the District 205 Foundation to support the technology costs for the York High School Business Incubator. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, Gifts to the District.
I second.
And I just want to say a huge thank you to the foundation for supporting this for our high school students to have an opportunity to experience business in a really tangible way and see if that's something they want to explore as they move on outside of York High School. So a huge thank you to the foundation for supporting us in so many ways, but in particular for this business incubator and helping it get off the ground. So thank you. Any other comments? All right, go ahead.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is approval of donations to Jefferson, Jackson, Hawthorne, Field, Fisher, and York.
So it's recommended that you approve these donations, and I will summarize them here. Jefferson PTA, 2 donations, $6,000 to purchase indoor activity items for when students have to stay inside for recess, and $7,000 to add to the outdoor classroom area at Jefferson. Then the Dads Club would also like to donate up to $10,000 to purchase 2 Gaga pits for the outdoor play area at Jefferson. At Jackson, that dollar amount is $13,000, $1,000 toward the art program. They want to purchase some new equipment for that space. And then $2,500 for high-interest novels in grades 2 through 5. $7,900 for furniture to update flexible seating in classrooms. That was screened through the facilities department. $1,000 into their Kindness Matters Fund. That's part of their school culture work at Jackson, Then Hawthorne, $17,400, $3,500 towards a classroom library that is being suggested due to the fact that they will have an additional section next year. $3,900. They want to, first school in the district, I believe that's doing this, purchase leveled readers in math to try to extend our literacy concepts in math. So that would be interesting to me to see if we could build off of that. $10,000 to rehabilitate their outdoor learning space. As is consistent with that, they're responsible for maintaining those types of things. Field PTA, $2,500 for a one school, one book literacy project, and then $1,000 for decals in the student bathrooms, kind of good news messages and different types of quotes and happy things and that kind of stuff. Always appropriate for bathrooms. And then Fisher Elementary School, $5,000 for a book vending machine and the tokens that go with it. And this was designed by the PTA with the name Bailey's Books to try to commemorate and honor Jane Bailey's contributions to the school prior to her, with her retiring here at the end of the year. And then York High School, we have 2 vehicles, a 2006 Honda Accord being donated by Daniel Porro, and a $1,500 vehicle. The College of DuPage Manufacturing Department, so they are donating a surface grinder. And then Elmhurst Airborne Youth Basketball, $2,500 to the girls basketball program. And then the York Athletic Boosters with a major donation of $100,000 to purchase fitness equipment. The fitness room itself will be renovated this summer, and they will be purchasing new equipment to go in the room, which is used for not just for PE, but or not just for athletics purposes, but it's used for PE regularly on a daily basis. So that room gets a lot of use. A lot of students would benefit from that. So it would be recommended that you approve all of those donations.
Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of donations from the Jefferson School PTA in the amount of $13,000 for indoor activity items and a canopy to cover previously purchased picnic tables, the Jefferson Dads Club in the amount of $10,000 to purchase 2 Gaga pits, the Jackson School PTA in the amount of $13,000 to purchase items for the art program, to purchase novels, to purchase furniture, to create a Kindness Matters Fund, the Hawthorne School PTA in the amount of $17,400 for a classroom library, scholastic leveled math readers, and help in rehabilitating the green space, the Field School PTA in the amount of $3,500 to support a One School, One Book literacy project, to purchase decals for student restrooms, the Fisher School PTA in the amount of $5,000 for a book vending machine and tokens, community resident Daniel Porro in the amount of $1,000 for a 2006 Honda Accord, the College of DuPage in the amount of $1,500 for a used Schultz surface grinder, Elmhurst Airborne Youth Basketball in the amount of $2,500 for girls basketball equipment and supplies, and the York Athletic Boosters in the amount of $100,000 for new fitness equipment. These donations are accepted in accordance with policy number 880, gifts to the district.
I second the motion.
Discussion?
There is. I'd like to start out by thanking the Jefferson School PTA and the Jefferson School Dads Club for their generous donations to Jefferson Elementary School, supplementing taxpayers' money to make their school a better place.
I'd like to thank the Jackson Elementary School PTA and community for their generous donation. The items they're donating support art, reading, collaborative learning, and the Kindness Matters Fund is a great way to support our families in our community in times of need. The donations are much appreciated. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Hawthorne School PTA for their donations and for their overall level of activity. And I think it's a great testament to the level of partnership that we have across our community between private donations and obviously the public capital that we allocate as a school board. So thank you very much.
I would like to say thank you to all the generous community members and organized groups that have made these donations to York, because in the end, it's our schools and our students that benefit, and whether it's an individual or our boosters or community youth programs, all the students at York are going to continue to benefit from these wonderful gifts to from the district to the district.
I'd like to thank the Conrad Fisher PTA for their generous donation of the book vending machine. I also want to call out a special thanks really to all our principals, but I'm focusing on Jane Bailey right now. This donation was to honor her in her retirement. The principal's role is a tenuous one where they have to be the liaison for our community. They have to make sure they are the liaison for the community to the administration, and the reverse. And they have to make sure they have sometimes a difficult job in making sure that they represent their community while following the administrative role. Our principals in general do an excellent job at that. And I want to call a special thanks to Jane Bailey, who's done that for a very long time. She will be missed, and we know that our new principal will continue in that role. So a thank you to the PTA and congratulations to Jane Bailey. She'll be memorized as Bailey's Books.
And I would just like to say thank you to the Field PTA for their generous donation for the One School, One Book literacy project, and also for their donation for the decals for the washrooms at Field School. So thank you to the community that supports our schools and enhances the educational experience for all of our students. And with that, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Motion passes. Next is Superintendent's Communication Facilities Update.
So the biggest thing, just to reinforce, is that we're beginning, we already had one, and we're continuing with a series of meetings with local realtors to make sure that they understand the boundaries, the boundary changes, and where they can access information and how they can counsel their clients. Then also having 2 public meetings, one tomorrow evening at 6:30 and one Monday at 9:30 a.m. And those are both at Edison. If there are community members in the affected boundary areas that would like to ask questions and get clarification. And then the rest of it is just some of the, over the summer now, a lot of the final designs and getting closer to bid specs and other things like that. Those projects will continue to be refined. And we're expecting a finance committee meeting most likely in June, depending on some of the conversation that you have at the June 10th special board meeting. So that will be another check-in point where we'll be able to provide updated information on what's going on with the project.
Any questions for Dave? Okay. All right. Freedom of Information Act request.
So there were 3. One regarding specific information presented at a board meeting, which was granted, one regarding a specific contract, which was granted, and one regarding certain bids, which was granted. And that was relatively tame 2 weeks. We only had 3, so that's good news for Ellen, because that takes her a lot of time to process those. And that's it for my, my report.
Tweet of the week.
Well, we have done a little bit of pre-discussion about Bailey's books during the donation segment. But just to continue our theme, and thank you to Jane for all of her service to the Fisher community and from being a shining light for Fisher Elementary School. The donation from the Fisher PTA is right before you. You can kind of see what that looks like. Bailey's books, when I spoke with Jane, she was over the moon. She could not think of a better way to really be remembered by her students, by the school, than to have this donation of literacy to the building. So congratulations to Jane on her retirement, and thanks for memories in the form of Bailey's books. And you can see that tweet at Fisher D205 on their Twitter feed, and you can also go to our hashtag Ignite D205. But again, thank you, Jane.
She will be missed.
Yes.
Okay, board communications. Does anyone have any reports or information to share with the full board? Okay, then we have 2 upcoming meetings scheduled. Monday, June 10th, 2019, Special Board of Education meeting at 6:30 here in District 205 Center. And Tuesday, June 18th, 2019, regular Board of Education meeting, 7:30, District 205 Center. And if there are nothing else, then I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.